Imagine the sound of explosions in the Caracas sky at midnight, and American soldiers taking Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro from his own home. Ever wonder why this event is so significant in today's world? Because it shows how a country's political crisis can escalate to the level of an international war, where oil, drugs, and power struggles are all intertwined. Now the question arises, will Maduro's capture set Venezuela free or plunge it deeper into darkness? Today we'll tell this story step by step, so you can understand the truth behind it for yourself. Let's start the story from way back, when Venezuela was a country floating on a sea of oil. In 1999, Hugo Chavez came to power and led Venezuela towards socialism. He did a lot for the poor, but the dependence on oil kept growing. After Chavez's death, in April 2013, his close associate Nicolas Maduro became president. Maduro, who was once a bus driver, followed in Chavez's footsteps. But since 2014, falling oil prices triggered hyperinflation in the country. By 2018, inflation surpassed 1,000,000%. Millions of people began fleeing the country due to a lack of food and medicine. To date, nearly 8 million Venezuelans have become migrants in Colombia, Peru, and the US. Accusations of election fraud were leveled against Maduro. In May 2018, many countries refused to recognize his re-election. Then, Juan Guaido, Speaker of the National Assembly, declared himself interim president in January 2019, and more than 50 countries, including the US, supported him. But Maduro didn't step down. He had the backing of the military and countries like Cuba, Russia, and China. During Donald Trump's first term, from 2017 to 2021, the US imposed harsh sanctions on Venezuela, which further collapsed the country's economy. In March 2020, the US Department of Justice charged Maduro with narco terrorism. They announced a $15 million reward for his head for running a group called Cartel de los Soles. Elections were held in Venezuela in July 2024. Maduro declared victory with 51% of the vote, but opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez claimed he had received 67%. Protests erupted after that, and Trump, becoming president for a second time in January 2025, began increasing pressure on Maduro. In November, Trump called Maduro and said, "I'm giving you and your family a chance to leave the country safely, but resign immediately." Maduro refused, and that refusal brought about this dramatic consequence. Now let's get to the main event, which took place in Caracas in the early hours of Saturday, January 3rd, 2026. Under the direct orders of President Donald Trump, a military operation named Operation Absolute Resolve began. 150 aircraft were involved, destroying Venezuela's air defense systems so that helicopters could reach Caracas safely. The center of the operation was the Fuerte Tiuna military base, where Maduro and his wife, Cilia Flores, were staying. U.S. Delta Force soldiers descended from helicopters, entered the base, and arrested Maduro. The operation lasted only 2 hours and 20 minutes. No American soldiers were killed, but on the Venezuelan side, about 80 people died, including 32 Cuban security officials. Maduro and Flores were handcuffed and taken first to a warship named the USS Iwo Jima, then flown to New York via Guantanamo Bay. In the morning, Trump announced on Truth Social, "We got Maduro," and that the US would run Venezuela until a safe transition occurs. Following this, Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in as interim president, but she demanded Maduro's release. On Sunday, January 4th, Trump told reporters on Air Force One, "Rodriguez has spoken with our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and will cooperate. Maduro is being held at the Metropolitan Detention Center in New York, and on Monday, January 5th, he was produced in Manhattan Federal Court, where he and Flores pleaded not guilty to charges of drug trafficking and narco terrorism." The sounds of explosions and low-flying planes terrified the people in Caracas, and power went out in parts of the city. To understand why this happened, we need to look at the political, economic, and social reasons. Politically, Trump sees Maduro as a major threat, because millions of migrants are coming to America from Venezuela, and according to Trump, Maduro is sending criminals from prisons and mental hospitals to create instability at the US border. Economically, Venezuela's oil reserves, the world's largest, are Trump's target because Chavez and Maduro cost American companies billions of dollars by nationalizing them. According to analysts, this operation is part of Trump's America First policy, which focuses on immigration and oil. Socially, Maduro's rule has destroyed Venezuela. Food shortages, medicine scarcity, and the rise of guerrilla groups in a country of 30 million people. Psychologically, Trump's maximum pressure policy is meant to weaken Maduro, which began during his first term. Among the hidden reasons are Maduro's ties with China, Russia, and Iran. These countries have invested billions in Venezuela, and Cuba provided security. Many believe this operation was intended to challenge this alliance. The invisible impact is increasing U.S. influence in Latin America, but there are allegations of violating international law since this was done without UN approval. Analysts say this could increase the risk of civil war in Venezuela and create an environment of fear in other countries around the world. Look at the impact of this event. Public reaction is mixed. Many in Venezuela are cheering. Opposition supporters are waving flags in the streets of Caracas because Maduro's rule ruined their lives. But Maduro's supporters, like the Colectivos militia, are protesting, gathering near Miraflores Palace to demand Maduro's release. In New York, clashes broke out between pro-Maduro protesters and Venezuelan migrants. The police had to intervene. Nationally, Venezuela's Supreme Court made Rodriguez the interim president, but the opposition wants new elections. Internationally, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, and Colombia condemned the operation, calling it military intervention instead of a peaceful solution. Mexico's president said, "External military intervention never brings democracy." European countries like Spain and Switzerland are calling for de-escalation, and the UN Security Council has called an emergency meeting. China and Russia strongly condemned it, calling it a violation of international law. Short-term effects include power outages in Venezuela, security crises, and the closure of Caribbean airspace. In the long run, if the US controls the oil, the economy might improve, but sovereignty will be lost. In the media, CNN is raising legal questions, while Fox News is calling it a success for Trump. Globally, this is bringing back the Monroe Doctrine, which keeps Latin America under US influence. January 5, 2026, Maduro appeared in Manhattan court, where he pleaded not guilty. This event is linked to the current situation because it's part of Trump's immigration policy. He said migrant numbers have increased because of Maduro. According to verified information, the 2020 charges still stand, and if convicted, he could face a long prison sentence. Analysts, like retired General Mick Ryan, say the US won't keep troops in Venezuela, but will instead cooperate with Rodriguez. But in Trump's words, if there's no cooperation, a second operation could happen. International aid is now needed to bring peace back to Venezuela, and this shows how one country's crisis affects the entire world. This story reminds us that there are no rules in the game of power, and how one decision can change the fate of an entire nation. Nicolas Maduro's capture is a new beginning for Venezuela. But is it true liberation or just another set of chains? Think about it. If big countries decide the fate of smaller ones, where will the future of global democracy go? Be sure to leave your valuable comments below. Thank you for staying with us throughout the video. See you in the next video. Until then, stay well and stay healthy.